They say betrayal hits like a slap. That's not true. A slap, at least, is loud. Betrayal? It arrives quietly, like a phone that never rings or a chair that's no longer warm. And for me, it started with a smell. Tabitha always wore this vanilla and something perfume. Not overpowering, not sweet, just hers. But that weekend, when she said she was off to a marketing seminar downtown, she came home smelling like citrus and expensive soap. Hotel soap. I didn't question it. Not then. That's the thing about denial. It doesn't scream. It whispers. And I was fluent. Saturday was quiet. Too quiet. I remember standing in the kitchen with my coffee, staring at the blank space where her mug usually sat. Even our clutter had character. Her absence? Sterile. Sunday morning, I heard her humming in the bathroom. The same song she hummed when she felt smug. She came out wearing a sweatshirt I got her for our 3rd anniversary, like she needed a prop for a play she wasn't committed to. "You sleep okay?" she asked, sipping her smoothie like nothing was off. Like a rock, I lied. What I didn't mention was that I spent the night in my truck. My truck. Because our bed didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like a borrowed space in a home where my name was on the deed, but not in her heart. And still, I stayed. Like a fool waiting for a train that already left the station. Later that afternoon, I saw it. Not a text. Not a call. An envelope. Cream-colored. Embossed. It sat on the dresser like a landmine. I opened it. Curiosity, spite, survival. Pick your reason. Inside, a printed invitation. Join us in celebrating the engagement of Tessa Marie Whitlock and Rory James Calder. Tessa, my wife. Still legally. My last name, already forgotten. The RSVP deadline was 3 days away. I stared at it so long, the ink started to blur. Not from tears. From rage held so tightly, it warped the air. I put the invitation back. She hadn't mentioned Rory once. But she didn't need to. He was the citrus. I didn't ask about Rory that night. I didn't need to. The air already did the talking. Her perfume was gone, replaced by the scent of something unfamiliar, something borrowed. She hummed again, folding towels like nothing had happened. Like the invitation with her name and another man's wasn't practically glowing on the dresser like a flare. At dinner, we sat in silence. Just the scraping of forks and the occasional throat clear. Eventually, she said it, like it was nothing more than an observation. "He makes me laugh more than you do." No rage. No shame. Just chicken, potatoes, and a grenade. I nodded, chewed slowly, and said, "You know what's wild? I believed you when you said it was just a work thing." Tabitha didn't flinch. "Don't make this dramatic," she said. "It's not cheating. It's different. Different. Like there's a polite version of betrayal. Like a clean cut hurts less than a jagged one." "Was the confetti still in your hair when you came back from your little seminar?" I asked, folding my napkin with a calm I didn't feel. "Or did you sweep that away with the rest of your guilt?" She sighed. "I knew you'd make it about that. This is why." "This is why what, Tabitha?" "Why you fell into the arms of a man who thinks engaged is just a soft launch for adultery." She stood. "I don't have to explain myself to you." "No, you don't," I said, pushing my chair back slowly. "Because you already did. You just used someone else's name on the envelope." She stormed out of the room. I didn't follow. I sat there long after the food went cold, thinking about Rory. About how she must have smiled at him. The way she used to smile at me. I didn't know his face, but I knew his type, and I was planning to meet him. Just not yet. I couldn't sleep. Again. But this time, it wasn't just the usual insomnia. It was calculation. That dangerous blend of memory and strategy. At 3:11 a.m., I got up. Not to pace. Not to rage. Just to check. I walked into the kitchen, silent as snowfall, and opened the drawer where we kept the phone chargers. Hers was missing. So was her work laptop. I opened the pantry. Her travel mug gone too. She wasn't home. At least, not in spirit. Her body? Who knows where it went to sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table, where her engagement invitation still sat. I stared at it like it owed me an explanation. And that's when I did something I hadn't done in years. I turned on the old desktop computer. The one we used to share. The one she forgot I still had access to. Her cloud storage was still logged in. I found an album labeled Work Events. Harmless. Professional. Except it wasn't. First photo. Her and Rory in front of a lake. Not a name tag in sight. Her head against his chest. His hand on her back like it belonged there. Second photo. A champagne toast. Ring visible. Not her wedding ring, his. Third photo. A boomerang video of the two of them dancing. Slow. Intimate. Like the world had dimmed for their benefit. She didn't even hide it well. The metadata showed it was taken the same weekend I thought she was in Nashville for a branding seminar. That seminar? Just a name she picked from a flyer, I bet. I copied everything. Not out of revenge. Out of documentation. Because gaslighting only works if you don't keep receipts. I'd always pictured the first time I met the other man as explosive. Some movie scene fantasy, raised voices, a coffee cup thrown, maybe a dramatic walkout with a coat tossed over the shoulder. But what actually happened? It was a Tuesday. Of course it was. The most forgettable day of the week. And I ran into him while buying tile grout. I didn't even realize it was him at first. He was just another guy in line, holding a box of nails and scrolling through his phone with the distracted confidence of someone who never once imagined he'd be confronted. But then I saw his watch. Silver. Minimalist. With a cracked leather strap she used to admire. I leaned slightly, just enough to see the name on his name tag. He was wearing some polo with an embroidery that said Calder Home and Renovation. Rory Calder. There it was. Funny how life doesn't pause for these moments. Nobody gasped. The lights didn't dim. The store clerk didn't suddenly stop scanning items. I just stood there, behind the man engaged to my wife, watching him compare loyalty card discounts like he was the hero in his own little story. I didn't speak to him then. That wasn't the time. This wasn't revenge season. Not yet. Instead, I followed him out. Casually. Aisle 5 to the parking lot. He loaded supplies into the back of a clean black Tacoma, one of those high-end trims with matte black wheels and a custom bumper. The kind of truck you buy when you want to look rugged but don't plan to use it. And then, right as he closed the tailgate, he pulled out his phone. His face softened. I didn't have to guess who he was texting. I knew. I memorized his plates. Took a photo, actually. Not because I planned to slash tires or follow him home. Nothing that theatrical. But I needed an anchor. Proof that he was real. Not just a concept or a ghost wearing cologne. Back in my car, I sat with the engine off and stared at the steering wheel. I thought about how many times she'd lied with that same calm tone. How many marketing dinners were just champagne flutes and stolen glances. I wondered if she told him about me. If she framed me as the dull, predictable husband. The guy who folds his socks. Who doesn't get her anymore. Who makes great coffee but not great conversation. I wasn't angry. Not in that moment. I was something worse, clear. The next day, she came home humming again. That same smug little tune. She set her bag on the counter, kicked off her shoes, and opened the fridge like nothing was wrong. Chicken or pasta tonight? She asked. Or are we doing leftovers? I didn't answer right away. I was too busy watching the way she avoided looking at me. Like if she kept moving, I wouldn't catch up. Rory drives a Tacoma, I said. Flat. Neutral. Like I was reading from a weather report. She froze. Briefly. Just enough to register. Then she laughed, too quickly. What? She asked, voice light but tight. Why would you? I saw him, I said. Yesterday. At the hardware store. She closed the fridge. Slowly. Did you talk to him? Her voice dipped an octave, no longer casual. No. Didn't seem fair to blindside a man who doesn't even know I still live here. Her jaw clenched, just slightly. I didn't mean for things to happen this way, she said, as if that line was supposed to cover months of deception. That's the thing about intentions, Tabitha, I said, setting my mug down. They don't matter after impact. She crossed her arms. A defense posture. You've been snooping. No, I said. I've been surviving. I could see it in her eyes. She thought I was about to beg. To plead. Maybe even to cry. But I wasn't playing that part in her drama. I know about the lake, I continued. The cabin. The engagement party. The fake seminar. The RSVP deadline that you didn't bother hiding. She didn't deny it. Didn't even apologize. It's complicated, she muttered. No. It's cowardly, I replied. Silence. Then she said, he makes me feel alive again. That one landed. Not like a punch. Like a quiet knife. I nodded. Once. Good, I said, walking past her toward the hallway. Because when I leave, you'll need that feeling to keep you company. I spent the next 3 hours packing not with anger, but with focus. My clothes. My documents. A photo of my parents from their wedding day. My watch. The one she never liked because it wasn't modern. She didn't come into the room. Just sat in the living room, probably stewing or plotting how to spin this to her friends. As I zipped the last bag, I looked around at what used to be ours. The wall art we picked together. The bookshelf she never dusted. the bed we no longer shared. I wrote her a note. Not a goodbye. Just 4 words. You chose him. Remember. I left it on the coffee table and walked out without a sound. The door didn't slam. It clicked. Soft. Final. I stayed in a motel the color of spoiled milk. You know the type, flickering sign, buzzing vending machine, and a smell that never quite leaves your clothes. Room 112 had a view of the parking lot and a mini fridge that hummed like it had trauma. It was perfect. The first night, I just sat. Not out of grief. Out of sheer disbelief. Because even when you know something's over, there's still that moment you expect someone to come running after you, to apologize, to say wait. But no one came. Tabitha didn't text. Didn't call. She let me leave like I was a tenant whose lease had expired. I had one missed call. Her sister, Jenna, left a voicemail that started with, "Hey, I don't want to get in the middle, but," and ended with something about Tabitha needing time to figure herself out. Translation: she's spinning a narrative. One where I probably stormed out irrationally and she was blindsided by my coldness. I didn't care. I was past needing anyone's permission to feel betrayed. At noon the next day, I opened my email and saw it, an auto-generated invite from Tabitha. No message, no apology, just a formal invitation to her engagement party. It wasn't even sent directly. I was CC'd, as if I were a distant cousin. I laughed. Loud. Sharp. The kind of laugh you let out when your heart's past broken. Just echo. I didn't delete it. I printed it. Then I drove back to the house. Not to confront her. Not yet. But I needed something. Evidence? Closure? Closure's a lie. I just needed to stand in the ruins one more time and remember what it felt like before everything caved in. The key still worked. Of course it did. She was in the kitchen when I walked in, wearing that soft cardigan she only wore when she was trying to seem harmless. She froze mid-pour wine, of course, and blinked like she'd seen a ghost. "Elle, what are you doing here?" I held up the invitation. "I got your RSVP." She looked away. That was automated. I didn't mean. To include me? To remind me I've been replaced with someone whose name sounds like a mid-tier real estate firm? Don't worry. I'm not here to protest. She set the glass down. Then why are you here? I came for the last piece of me you haven't thrown away yet. She looked confused. What does that mean? It means you kept the wedding video? She winced. It's in the attic. Of course it was. I went upstairs without asking. The attic hadn't changed. Still dusty. Still stacked with boxes labeled things like Christmas 2018 and Donate. I found the one marked DVDs under a bin of old scarves. Inside? Our wedding video. The one we paid too much for because she wanted a drone shot of us walking across that stupid wooden bridge. I held it in my hand for a while, unsure why I even wanted it. Maybe to remind myself it was real once. Maybe because I didn't want her using it as content for whatever twisted story she'd tell next. When I came back downstairs, she was sitting on the couch. Not crying. Not yelling. Just annoyed. "You can't keep showing up like this," she said. "I won't," I replied. "This was the last time." She nodded. "Good." I turned to leave, then paused. "Tell me one thing, and I'll go." She tilted her head. "What? Was there ever a time, even a day, where I was enough?" She looked at me for a long moment. Not to find an answer, but to choose one. Then she said, "Maybe." But I got used to wanting more. There it was. Not a confession. Not even an insult. Just a truth that felt colder than any betrayal. "I hope Rory gives you more," I said, walking to the door. She didn't reply. Just sipped her wine and stared at the floor like it had better things to say. I walked out for the last time. This time, the door didn't click. It creaked. And behind it, the life I gave her kept pouring wine. I didn't cry. That's the part people always ask. You didn't even tear up? Like there's a rule book on grief, and I missed the chapter on appropriate reactions. No, I didn't cry. I watched, I listened, and I remembered. Because some losses don't hit you with tears. They hit you with clarity. I watched the wedding video in the motel. No, I didn't pour a drink or light a candle like some sad cliche. I sat on the edge of the bed, shoes still on, jacket zipped, like I was ready to leave even as I hit play. There we were. Tabitha in that lace-back dress, hair up, laughing before the ceremony like she wasn't already rewriting the ending. And me, eyes bright, shoulders relaxed, holding her hand like I had a lifetime of holding to look forward to. The officiant said something about forever. She giggled. I smiled. And then came the vows. I had forgotten the part where she said, "You're my safe place." Not favorite person. Not soulmate. Safe place. Back then, I thought that meant comfort, trust, a good thing. Now, I realized it meant boring. You don't crave your safe place. You return to it when things fall apart elsewhere. That was my job. I wasn't the dream. I was the shelter when the dream got wet. Halfway through, I turned the video off. Not because it hurt too much, but because it didn't hurt enough. It just felt like watching actors in a play I used to believe was real. That night, I couldn't sleep. Again. So I did what people do when they need answers but know they'll regret them. I opened her social media. She hadn't blocked me. She probably thought I'd never look. Still underestimating me, even now. There it was. A story. 15 seconds. Her hand in his, ring front and center, captioned, "Can't wait to start forever." The background? A cabin porch. Twinkly lights. You could even hear Rory laughing in the background, one of those confident, neck-deep laughs people make when they don't know consequences yet. I didn't screenshot it. Didn't comment. Just watched it once and closed the app. And then I wrote a letter. Not to her. To myself. Dear me. You were not weak. You were honest. You were not boring. You were consistent. You didn't lose her. She lost herself and made you the casualty. You gave everything. She gave up. Remember that when you start to question what could have been, you were never the villain. You were the house. The home, the roof over her recklessness. And when the storm passed, she walked out with a man holding a flashlight and forgot who kept the walls up when everything shook. Let her go. Burn the plans. Walk into the unknown with your spine straight. She chose a spark over a flame. Don't chase flickers. Sincerely. The version of you who sees everything clearly now. I folded that letter and stuck it in my wallet. A reminder, not just of her, but of the man I refused to stop being, no matter who failed to see him. The next day, I packed. Not just clothes this time. My life. The motel was a transition zone, but I wasn't staying in limbo. I called an old college buddy in Seattle, Greg. The kind of guy who always said, if you ever need to disappear, I've got a couch and a freezer full of beer. Turns out, I needed both. He sounded surprised, but not judgmental. You okay? He asked. Not yet, I said, but I'm getting good at not pretending. I left town that afternoon. Didn't text Tabitha. Didn't leave a note. I mailed the wedding DVD to her sister. No return address. Let her do what she wanted with it. Use it as a coaster, set it on fire, frame it next to the new engagement photos. I didn't care. On my way out, I passed that lake. The one where we used to sit every fall, wrapped in a shared blanket, planning a future she clearly didn't want. I pulled over. Stepped out. And for a moment, just stood there, breathing in the kind of cold air that only tells the truth. Crisp. Sharp. Unforgiving. Then I did what I should have done long ago. I tossed my wedding ring into the water. It didn't splash. It just disappeared. Perfect. Seattle rain doesn't ask questions. It just falls. Relentless, gray, dependable, kind of like the man I used to be. Greg's place sat above a coffee shop and smelled like cedar and burnt espresso. He didn't ask for details. Just handed me a beer, slapped my shoulder, and said, whatever it was, she didn't deserve you. I didn't argue. We spent a week doing things men do when they're trying not to fall apart, replacing drywall, organizing toolboxes, watching too many reruns of shows we already knew the ending to. He worked construction. I helped out. Manual labor's underrated when your heart's still bleeding. At night, I wrote. Not poems. Not revenge fantasies. Just notes. Observations. Evidence. Not for court. For memory. Because men like me, we don't forget. One night, Greg asked, you ever think of telling him? Who? I said, though I already knew. Rory. I didn't answer right away. Just stared at the rain sliding down the window like it was dragging yesterday behind it. He knows, I said finally. Even if she didn't say it out loud, he knows she was someone else's before she was his. And he'll convince himself it's different with him. Until it's not. Greg smirked. You gonna warn him? I shook my head. No. Let him find out the same way I did, when it's too late and the damage already has your name on it. I stayed in Seattle for 3 weeks. Long enough to remember how it felt to wake up without checking my phone for silence. That's the thing people never talk about, the silence. It gets heavy. I didn't call her. Not once. But one morning, I got a voicemail from her sister. She's asking about you. That was the whole message. I deleted it. Then another one, this time from a mutual friend. Tabitha looks tired. Like she aged 5 years in a month. I didn't respond. Aging will do that when the lies finally outgrow their costumes. Then, the text came. Not a full sentence. Just 3 words. I was wrong. No punctuation. No apology. Just the written equivalent of a door left cracked, an invitation to step back into a fire and pretend I didn't know what burned me. I didn't reply, but I didn't delete it either, because part of me wanted to remember how little it took for her to think everything could be undone. Week 4, I went back. Not to the house. To the city. The courthouse, actually. Finalizing the divorce papers. I didn't send them to her electronically. I delivered them. In person. She opened the door barefoot, holding a mug with a phrase she used to find ironic. Good vibes only. She looked small. Not physically. Just smaller. Like someone whose illusions had been repossessed. Albert, she said, almost like a sigh. That's the thing about your name. You forget how many meanings it can hold until someone uses it with all the weight of what they broke. I brought these, I said, handing her the manila envelope. Just sign where the markers are. She didn't take it right away. Just stared at the envelope like it might explode. Can we talk? She asked. We are, I replied. I'm asking you to end something you already killed. Her eyes welled slightly. Not enough for sympathy. Just enough to look like guilt got a seat at the table. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said. But you didn't mean not to, either, I replied. And that's the part one can't forget. She opened her mouth, closed it again, then whispered, I thought he'd make everything feel new. And did he? Her silence was louder than any answer. I nodded. Thought so. I turned to leave. She called after me. Elle, wait. I paused. I keep thinking about Maine, she said. That trip, the jellyfish, your dumb sunburn, the way you fell asleep with your book on your face. I waited. And I remember laughing. Like real, deep, embarrassing laughter. And I keep wondering, when did I stop choosing that? I turned back. Looked her dead in the eye. You stopped the moment you needed more than love to be happy. And then I walked. Didn't look back. Not once. That night, Greg and I shared a drink out on the porch. You done? He asked. I nodded. Yeah, not just with her. With all of it. He handed me a folded piece of paper. Then this is yours. It was a plane ticket. One way. Anywhere I wanted. He bought it weeks ago. Just hadn't filled in the destination yet. Where do you want to go? He asked. I stared out into the wet dark and smiled, not because I had an answer, but because for the first time in months, the question didn't scare me. I picked Portland. Not because it was far. Not because it was beautiful. But because I'd never been, and that felt symbolic enough. The apartment was small. Bare walls, crooked floorboards, and a radiator that sounded like it had secrets. It was perfect. It didn't know me. It didn't know her. It didn't have memories. The first thing I did was buy postcards. Not to send. To write. Not to her. To myself. One for every truth I had swallowed during the years we called a marriage. Every silent apology I never got. Every warning sign I explained away. Postcard 1. The moment she started dressing up for someone else was the moment you should have asked why you were dressing down for her. Postcard 2. You forgave her before she apologized. That was your first mistake. Postcard 3. Being the better man doesn't always win you the girl, but it saves your soul. I pinned them above the desk. They were ugly postcards. Tourist shots of lighthouses and clam chowder. But the words made them sacred. I got a job, part-time furniture shop. Hands-on. No email signatures. No forced small talk about office birthdays. The guy who hired me didn't ask about my past. I liked him immediately. At night, I walked. Miles. Until my legs ached and my thoughts ran out of things to say. I didn't miss her. I missed the man I used to be before I tried to become the one she wanted. 6 weeks in, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address. Her handwriting. I almost tossed it. But curiosity, that old fool, held me hostage. Inside was a photo. Our wedding. Black and white, edges frayed, faces happy. And a note. You were always the real thing. I just didn't know how rare that was until I traded it for something fake. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know I remember who you were. And I see what I lost. I didn't respond. There's a dignity in silence. Some people mistake silence for weakness. But not me. I know what silence really is. It's control. It's strength. It's power. I kept the photo. Not because I missed the moment, but because it reminded me how convincing the illusion can be. Even to me. I saw Rory again. Not in person. In a headline. Local contractor involved in scandal over fraudulent permits. Turns out the man she left me for cut corners. Didn't build things to last. The metaphor practically wrote itself. I saved the article. Not to laugh. Just to remind myself that what looks solid from a distance can be hollow beneath the surface. I don't know if they're still together. I don't care. People like her, they don't get endings. They get loops. Different names, same cycles. Me? I got out. Not bitter. Not broken. Just rebuilt. And now, when I hear her name, I don't feel anything. Not anger. Not longing. Just memory. Faded and folded like an old receipt. I keep one last postcard above my desk. The final truth. She thought you'd fall apart. Instead, you disappeared so completely. She mistook your silence for a story she could control. But you weren't lost. You were done. And that's the difference.